Hello, welcome to English 123, week 1. This is going to be our first lecture for the session. We're going to be discussing the writing process, the claim or argument, the actual research paper, conducting research, and what all those details, how that all fits together and works together to culminate in a final research paper for the class. So this is just the beginnings, the foundation that will be laid for what will ultimately result in your final paper 8 weeks from now. So first of all, we want to discuss just briefly the structure of the class and some of the goals. We kind of briefly discussed this in the introduction video, but I kind of wanted to go a little more, touch on this a little bit more. But obviously to write the 10-page research paper is the ultimate goal of the class. But we also want to learn how to conduct quality research. There's also, which also includes learning how to write a bibliography, an annotated bibliography. Further, how to write a proposal, how to present your idea to receive approval for research. And it's just a formal exercise in this class, but in other classes, you might be actually required to present a proposal to even get approved for a particular idea or a particular topic that you want to pursue. And that could typically be for an upper division course as you work towards your BA, but it is something you want to learn early because you don't necessarily know when it can come up in another class. So it is an important feature. So writing that proposal, and then of course those various stages of the writing process, which we're going to discuss today. What makes one source more appropriate than another source? That's also what we'll be discussing. And then, of course, at the end of the class, we'll be finishing this with a reflection of what you've learned and how you've developed as a writer throughout the 8 weeks. So that's briefly just some of the things that we're going to be touching on through the course. That's an overall structure of the course. If you've already read your syllabus, you're probably already familiar with that, but I just kind of wanted to touch on each of those details. But for our purposes in this video, initially starting off, we want to talk about the writing process in general. I've kind of briefly mentioned some of those features, but the main thing to keep in mind with the writing process, you're going to hear this term throughout the whole course, is that it is recursive. And what that means is it's not necessarily finished. The writing process isn't finished until you've actually submitted your essay or your paper on the final due date. Your final deadline is when that recursive nature of the assignment, of the paper, of the essay, of the research project finally ends. And what recursive really means is it's never ending. It goes back, it's cyclical. You may initially have a thesis statement or a claim or a research idea, and then you'll begin to find that maybe that needs to be fine-tuned. So you'll continue to shape it and mold it to better fit make it better fit your goals for the paper. And then even though after you have that initial thesis statement down, you may find that as you do your research, you'll need to adjust your main points of evidence. Things will come up that you maybe didn't expect, or new evidences may come up that you found that really support or maybe detract from what you want to argue. So everything is in a state of flux. It ebbs and flows throughout the course of your research project. So don't feel as though everything is written in stone. So keep that in mind. It's an ongoing work in progress. It's all a process of development until your final deadline. Until you finally submit your paper, then it's over. What does the writing process really entail? And I kind of briefly mentioned this. It is what we call pre-writing. You may have already experienced this in the past with other courses, maybe in 113, but really pre-writing is all the developmental work that takes place prior to actual drafting. So that includes, brainstorming. That includes any kind of listing, any kind of charting, any kind of diagramming, any kind of free writing you might do. It also includes research. It includes how you are going to frame your argument with your research. What types of sources are you going to pursue? Where do you need to find them? It's all of your planning and development that gets you to actual drafting. And as I've said previously, the pre-writing stage is crucial because that's really what's going to help you build content and provide information, provide actual substance to what you're actually going to write. If you sit down and try to write a research paper without any pre-writing, chances are you're going to be sitting there for a long time with just a blank page. You're going to have some serious issues with writer's block. You may sit there and I don't know what to say, I don't know how to begin this. So really pre-writing is really getting you started in the process of drafting. So again, you're going to be doing a pre-writing exercise in this particular week, but you want to continue to develop that pre-writing because you may find further details that will come up for you to include in your paper. So for instance, if you use listing, what listing is you just list out ideas that you may have. Say you don't know really exactly what you want to pursue for a thesis statement. Well, what are some subjects, some topics that you can really pursue? Well, start with what you like. Write down the things that you like, that you're passionate about. Okay, things that you want to see change, things that you want to see either implemented or stopped. Those are usually where it's usually one of those areas. Things that you want to see done and things that you want to see stopped, and they're usually things that you're passionate about. It doesn't necessarily have to be real hot button issues. It could just be certain procedural things that you see maybe at work or maybe in school. It could be simple things, but they can also be those really big controversial issues that we see in the media as well. So maybe start by listing things that you're passionate about, that you like, that you want to see come about, and then also those things that you're passionate about that you don't like, that you want to see stopped. There's some ways by listing those out you can then begin to prioritize and then begin to narrow down through process of elimination which maybe top 3 you'd want to pursue. Another pre-writing strategy, once you've developed, once you've chosen a topic, then you can brainstorm and maybe do a bubble chart to see how different points within that subject connect and how you're going to support your claim of what position you want to take on that particular subject. So you can then again list out maybe through a bubble chart, diagramming how they connect. What are those features that can become actual evidence of support? Now your evidence is also ultimately going to come from your research, but you may be able to, just thinking through it, brainstorm some ideas of actual features that you want to include in your paper. So those are some examples of pre-writing. Another one is free writing. You've probably done this, where you just sit down without any real hesitation with grammar or structure, but you just write out just what comes into mind about a given particular topic. That gets you started, that gets things flowing and moving, and then you go back and you read over that free write to see what maybe came out of that. Maybe some ideas that you maybe had that you've been thinking about, maybe some motions that you've had that have come down on paper that you can take and, okay, I want to pursue that idea. I really like that. I'm really passionate about that. But those are some ways that you can begin to generate ideas for starting a starting point for research. Because if you don't know really what to research, it's going to be difficult for you when you begin to go into the library or go into on the online Annie Gabriel library to really find those sources that you need. You need to really know what you need before you begin that research stage. So then after pre-writing and you've done your research, you've collected all of your source material, your evidence through those journal articles or books that you may have found, then it's actually the drafting stage. And again, the drafting stage is recursive as well. You may write your first draft, then you write your second draft, and you turn in your third draft, of course, in this class. But in some cases, it may go beyond a third draft even, because as you go from draft to draft, of course, you're reorganizing, you're restructuring, you're changing different features of your paper to make it better, to make it clearer, to make it more concise, to make it more effective in the communication. Um, so that is, and then you may go back again and readjust your thesis statement and your claim, and you maybe again readjust some of your sources and maybe rule out a source if possible. So even through the drafting stage, it's still in a process of development. And then again, there's the editing and revising stage. So you would think maybe that drafting is editing and revising, but it really isn't. It's more of a deliberate act of going through and looking at grammar, looking at spelling, looking at word usage, looking at all those things and editing for those, and also revising paragraphs. Maybe you want to put a paragraph, change the order of paragraphs to make the flow of thought more effective. Uh, so the editing and revising, it can have an aspect in the drafting process, but it is more deliberate. It is more of its own separate stage. It comes towards the end as you're fine-tuning your paper, not so much content-wise, but you're fine-tuning the existing content that you have. So really, drafting is creating content, revising and editing is then polishing that content and making it more effective for the purposes that you set out with the thesis statement. Okay, so that's the writing process overall. That's what we're going to be working on. That's what we're going to be hopefully developing your own approach to, however you want to pursue those different elements. And your textbook is going to give you ideas and walk you through those different elements to help you kind of pick out different tools that you like best. I mean, you might like pre-writing. I mean, you might like free writing. You might not like it. You might like listing and brainstorming and bubble charting and those sorts of things. You may not. So you'll need to pick up different tools that you like, and maybe you don't have to like it, but something that you think it works well for you based on your learning style and your own temperament. Pick up those things that work for you and then use them to your advantage. If something doesn't work, obviously don't use it. But what does work, keep it and keep using it and keep refining it and keep making it better. So that's really what the writing process is all about. In addition, we can talk about here what it means to argue a position. What does that mean in general? Well, really, our textbook lays that out really effectively, I think, very well. It's really just making an arguable claim. And what does that mean, arguable? Well, inevitably, arguable means there's two sides to the story. There's two sides to the issue. So you're not necessarily presenting a statement of fact. You're presenting a statement of argument that can have a counter argument. There should always be a counter argument to whatever argument that you're putting forth. Now, it could actually be a literal counter argument that's out there, or it could be hypothetical, but it really needs to have that flexibility in it to actually be the right topic for a position paper, okay, that we're going to be working on. So it's making an arguable claim. It has two sides to the story, two sides to the issue, and there should be a relative element of controversy to it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be controversial in the sense that it's on the news every day. Some of those topics are good. Some of them are way too controversial. They're way too biased and political to really make for an arguable claim. But as some of them can be refined to be, the controversy can be refined down to really make for a suitable argument paper. Issues of gun control and abortion rights and those types of things. They can make good papers, but they have to be refined and framed in such a way that it's an aspect of that topic, not necessarily the whole thing, because that is something that really can't be accomplished in 10 pages. So if you do choose to go with a larger, very controversial topic, you may need to find a niche within that topic to pursue that makes it manageable for 10 pages. So there should be a relative amount of controversy, and that two-sided nature of the issue inherently is controversial. If I disagree with you, that's a controversy. It's just a matter of how prevalent it is. So again, some topics there's no controversy at all. There's no dispute, and so that would not make for a good topic. So gauge that controversy. Find where that controversy is within a given academic field. There are certain academic controversies that we may not even know of unless we are part of that in-group, part of that actual community within that discipline. So be aware, find that controversy if you can, and that it would probably be useful to include in your research paper. You'll want to address that to find what the other side is and why they believe what they believe. That's one of the most important things to pursue in an argument, is knowing the other side and how to frame your argument in light of that counter argument. Moving on. So what I like though about the one statement from the textbook that I really find that really kind of sums up this idea of arguability. The textbook states here, people of goodwill can agree or disagree with them and present reasons and evidence to support their positions. That's right in the first paragraph of the reading assignment. So the key word here, goodwill. So there's a freedom of exchange with these claims. We want to have an attitude of goodwill. We're not necessarily attempting to bash a side, or we're not attempting to necessarily with ill will discredit a side. There is a goodwill of agreement and disagreement. We can agree to disagree, and there is evidence to show that disagreement, evidence to support, whether it is on the other side or is on your side. There's evidence, there needs to be evidence on both sides. This side says this because of ABC, and we say this because of ABC, or I say this because of ABC. That's really what we want in that arguable position. So the textbook's really going to give you those specifics on the arguing a position. But we're going to end, for the sake of time, we're going to end this video right here, and then we're going to pick it up in the next video for the next comments. All right, thank you.